Welcome back to the International Desk. I'm Lynda Kinkade. We return now to our top story. US President Donald Trump has just signed an executive order for a revised travel ban. We are waiting any moment now for top White House officials to give us details about the revised ban. These are live pictures from the White House. The revision is set to include some pretty major changes. Senior advisor Kellyanne Conway says it leaves Iraq off the list of banned countries. It treats Syrians like other refugee groups and clarifies which visa holders won't be affected. Well, our US politics reporter Tal Kopan and Supreme Court reporter Ariane De Vogue join me now from Washington. Great to have you both with us to break this all down. Tal, first to you, there are a few things that have been changed. As I mentioned, Iraq will be dropped. Explain the reasons for that.
Well, we understand this actually came after a heavy lobbying campaign of the administration from Iraq officials and also those familiar with the war on terror who said that, you know, in fighting ISIS, that this is sort of a counterproductive move, that Iraq is a key partner in this. And also, you know, we understand that there was some sort of heavy back and forth talking about the types of vetting that Iraq could engage in and provide to the United States, because keep in mind, you know, the justification for this ban has always been that the countries identified could not provide enough information on their nationals in order for the U.S. to feel secure admitting them. So we understand that there's been some back and forth, that Iraq has provided information that the administration has determined satisfies that request, but also concern about that partner in the fight against ISIS has at least impressed upon them the need to keep Iraq off this list.
And just looking at that second change, that Syrian refugees will be treated like other refugees. In the original ban, there was an indefinite ban against Syrian refugees coming to the US. So how is that going to be changed going forward?
Yeah, that's right. And keep in mind, you know, a lot of what the White House is doing here is responding to some of the areas that the courts have found objectionable. And, you know, one of the major questions was why single out this group? And, you know, they were asked in the courts to provide evidence for their reasoning. And over again, they sort of cited that these 7 countries had already been designated by the Obama administration and Congress as sort of high risk. But they couldn't really come up with an explanation as to why exactly this group of refugees could be subject to different restrictions than the others. So, you know, it's probably reasonable to assume that the administration took some of the feedback that it got from the courts, that it got from, you know, the agencies, the Hill, as it sort of ran this executive order through the normal proceedings that they didn't do the first time, and made some adjustments based on what they perceived the feedback to be.
And speaking of some of those legal challenges, I want to talk to Ariane about that, because this obviously was held up, the original travel ban was held up in quite a few courts. Will the changes we know of so far be enough to prevent that a second time round?
Well, you're absolutely right, because the challengers are going to look hard at this. And they say you may be able to make a couple of tweaks here and there, maybe even some significant changes. But they plan to go right back to court, and they plan to ask that the injunction remain in place. The administration, on the other hand, might go and say, look, that executive order isn't in play now. We have a new executive order, so those challenges might be moot. But they are fully expecting the challengers, the states, immigration rights groups, individuals who've been affected, to come running into court as quickly as possible and make many of the same arguments that they made the first time around. And they really, the administration suffered a big rebuke, especially from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
So, Ariane, just explain what other arguments they could make, given that those 3 changes, at least we know 3, have been now changed, 3 big issues.
Well, for instance, one of the big changes, one of the most important, right, is that the executive order is expected to make absolutely clear that it doesn't affect legal permanent residents and it doesn't affect valid visa holders. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals cared very much about due process, whether those people, specifically the legal permanent residents, had been taken care of carefully. And now this order makes clear it exempts them. So what might happen now is the challengers might say, okay, the due process concerns may be looked at here, but there are still religious discrimination concerns favoring one religion over another, and they can press equally heavily on that. And interestingly enough, the Federal Appeals Court really didn't base much of its opinion on the idea of religious discrimination.
Okay, Ariane De Vogue, great to have you with you. And Tal Kopan, we might come back to you once this press conference gets underway. Thanks for your perspective on that.